Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new NVIDIA daily update video. So today, ladies and gentlemen, let's go over NVIDIA stock. Let's go over what happened today on this post-earnings reaction. Let's talk about what we can expect moving forward and all of that good stuff. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed, don't forget to hit that like button. This is not financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. And of course, if you enjoy my technical analysis, thoughts on the charts, updates, etc. Well, again, I do have a YouTube membership where I'm constantly updating my members every single day as the market is trading. Definitely check that out. Options flow, technical analysis, etc. For just $3 a month on the first tier for the Tesla tier, which includes, of course, Tesla updates, technical analysis, options flow, as the market is trading every single day. Tier 2 includes NVIDIA for $5 a month, and then Tier 3 for $7 a month includes obviously Tesla plus NVIDIA, plus also non-Tesla, non-NVIDIA charts and things like that. And I also do chart requests from members in Discord. So yeah, if you're interested, that link is below. But jumping into it, NVIDIA closing the day up actually 3.25% on the day, closing, we'll just say just above $139 per share. Which obviously compared to the market is an outperformance, but it did have a pretty decent earnings yesterday, right? But again, the expected move, like I said, for earnings was about, it was like 7 to 8%. In other words, it was all the way up to about 148 to as low as about 123 roughly, right? So it did underperform in terms of the expected move. So anyone that was in calls, at least if they entered it before earnings, there's a good chance you probably lost, or puts especially, because again, IV crush essentially, right? That's what happens when you get that volatility crush, right? Because now the market's pricing in a much less move. So if it doesn't meet or exceed those expectations, essentially, from what I understand, it should not be in profit. You should most likely have still lost on that. But nonetheless, that's irrelevant. The point we're looking for here is the fact that, what happens next, right? Well, we did fade actually a decent portion of the move, because, again, the market, of course, was a little bit on the weaker end, especially tech-related stocks, right? You can see QQQ also faded a good portion of the move, which, of course, was combined with the fact that the whole tariff noise that occurred yesterday or last night, I should say, on the markets, right? So for NVIDIA, the way I look at it, honestly, it's actually a pretty simple look here, in my opinion, right? Again, I'll make it as simple as possible without overcomplicating it. So we have the 8 exponential moving average currently sitting at about 134. Again, it's going to move up tomorrow, right? Naturally, it's going to keep slowly rising to meet the stock somewhere in the middle, right? Or to the stock if the stock goes sideways. Tomorrow, it'll probably be closer to 135 and change, right? So the way I look at it, NVIDIA is pretty simple. We lost 140, unfortunately, right? So if I go to the 1 hour chart very, very quickly here, right? Could be printing a bull flag, but it lost 140. You can see for the first half of the day, it was holding about 140 per share, right? Give or take. And then, of course, it finally lost that, and now we're slowly coming into that range, which we could get a little bit higher into it, but it seems like this could be a small, little, tiny bear flag right into the 140 range, treat it as probably resistance now, and then make our way lower. So in other words, NVIDIA, below pretty much 140, short term, I actually do think that there's a higher chance than not that we come back down to the trend line and to that 8 exponential moving average, again sitting somewhere around the mid 130s, 135, 136, give or take, right? Give or take, something like that, right? And that's where it's going to get very interesting, because if NVIDIA can obviously bounce from here the way it did, for instance, over here, give or take, right, the trend line plus that 8 exponential moving average, we could still make it way higher. We could still get a nice little push to the upside once again, right? So at the very least, get close to equal highs over here. Best case scenario, in my opinion, is still $148 per share. So that's the way I'll be looking at that, right? However, don't forget, there is still some warning signs, right? For instance, this is not just NVIDIA, this is the market as a whole. We still have this bearish divergence on the daily. Tesla has it. SPY has it. QQQ has it. The whole market, or not the whole market, a good portion of the market though, right? A good portion of the market has this kind of bearish divergence on the RSI. On the daily now, it takes time to play out. It's not going to happen instantly overnight. It can take days to weeks easily. So keep that in mind. It's not going to happen overnight, but that is a warning sign to me, right? Telling me the fact that, we're probably getting pretty exhausted up here from the more, from the buyer's perspective. It doesn't mean we can't go a little bit higher still, of course. But just keep that in mind, right? There's that to me signals that there is some level of exhaustion kicking in. But again, it can take time. It's a daily bearish divergence. They take time. For example, a 1 hour bearish divergence that I've shown before to members and even on YouTube videos can take up to a week. So you can imagine how much longer a daily can take, right? So, just to put it into perspective. But again, if NVIDIA does come down to these levels, which I currently expect it to, probably maybe tomorrow, early next week, whatever the case may be, 136 we'll say roughly. That's where the trend line and the 8 EMA is. As long as it holds, again, equal highs to potentially new highs closer to 148. That's kind of what I would see. But like I said, with this exhaustion kicking in, if NVIDIA does, eventually, of course, come down to this general vicinity, but it starts losing that 8 exponential moving average and it starts losing this trend line, well, that's a bit of a different story, because here it lost that exponential moving average, right? It was kind of below it, but it still had the trend line. boom, it bounced off of that trend line beautifully. So if it loses this trend line, what that tells me is the fact that there's a good chance that whatever high we ended up putting up here, whether it was just this one or we ended up maybe making that one last high and then losing the trend line, essentially it'll tell me that there's a very good chance that whatever high we set up here is the high potentially for a bit, for a little bit, right? For a little bit for sure, right? And then we start most likely beginning a more, kind of deeper correction back down to the 120s, in my opinion, right? Mid to low 120s wouldn't fully shock me if this were to play out. And again, this will take time. It's not going to happen right away. Assuming we, of course, even lose this trend line, again, it'll take time. It'll take time, right? Keep that in mind. But that's what that would signal to me if this trend line is lost. So let's see how that actually plays out into tomorrow. We just had Marvell report earnings, a little bit down after hours, about 3%. So that is slightly affecting AMD and NVIDIA. You can see here they're down about 0.2%. So let's see how that ends up opening up tomorrow naturally, right? But that's kind of what I see. However, let's talk about a potentially exciting thing, right? This is what I'm going to be looking at for NVIDIA that could be actually really exciting for the bulls overall, longer term, but short term, it could lead to some pain. Let's talk about it. Similar to Tesla, Tesla's actually setting up something similar, but it'll be a very large cup and handle pattern. There's a chance that NVIDIA is setting up essentially this large cup and handle pattern, which again, naturally would make sense if it tops out somewhere around this general vicinity as well, right? It's kind of how the handle or how the cup forms. And from here, it does actually retreat. It does lose this trend line and it does come back down to about this 122-ish range, right? Give or take, of course, right? Let's just say it happens around here. That's the 0.382 level you can see on the Fibonacci's. And then it ends up creating a massive handle, right? Kind of a large bull flag, massive handle, like kind of like what we did here, just on a much larger scale, essentially. And that would essentially bring it well down to these levels. But from here, give or take, of course, low 120s, that could be a pretty nice opportunity setting up for a very large bullish cup and handle pattern into a very large breakout, which if this were to play out like this, again, this is just me kind of thinking to the future, who knows if it'll happen. But if this actually plays out like this, that would be a very bullish situation for NVIDIA. And I think this would lead it to new all-time highs. But keep in mind, this will take some time. It's not going to happen overnight, not even a week, not a month. This will take months. This will take definitely some months for sure for it to play out. So just keep that in mind. But I figured I'd mention this regardless because that could be something that we end up coming into, potentially moving down the down the road. So let's see how that plays out, guys. Let's see how that plays out. But that's kind of my overall perspective on NVIDIA without, again, overcomplicating it too much. Going over to the NVIDIA options flow, let's take a quick look. Nice bullish flow actually towards the end of the day, but nothing really standing out that's super, super crazy, to be completely honest with you. Some nice early June and mid-June call flow, but nothing really other than this one here, I guess. This is the only one that really stands out to me. Someone did buy $554,000 calls for tomorrow on NVIDIA. That's pretty interesting. Maybe they were making a bet on, I don't know, a positive reaction based off of Marvell earnings. I'm not entirely sure, to be completely honest with you. But there's that, I guess. So we'll see how that plays out into tomorrow. So that's the only thing that really stood out to me, to be honest. But yeah, that's all I got for you, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for watching. And I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.